My microphone is messing up. It's has something to do with the adapter, but I just wanted to go ahead and jump into the topic of today, which is not okay. Well, the new mayor, excuse me, the new elected mayor of New York City is a democratic socialist, Zoran Mamdani. And I don't follow too closely. I saw the debate between the three mayoral candidates, and it was a very, to me, I thought there was going to be a clear winner. But when I went on social media and I saw kind of what my peers were sharing, and really people who I actually really respect about what they think and the way that they think and the way that they frame things in kind of a neutral sense, as far as neutrality can go, given, different domains of knowledge and topics. So I do find it interesting that on social media, it was a little bit of a different story. It was a lot of people going against, and these were my peers, people close to my age, people even younger than me, talking about other of the people and why Mamdani shouldn't be elected. So, but to me, Mamdani is kind of like because he's a democratic socialist. If we go back and look at the years and years of, we've had Democrats, but they're not liberal enough. They're kind of like corporate Democrats. I guess you could say corporate liberals, which is like, what's a corporate liberal? A corporate liberal, I don't want to say that liberals are against capitalism, but I think generally speaking, liberals do speak more towards something like communism rather than like it's not that liberals hate a free economy. It's that, well, liberals are kind of more fighting for humanitarian rights, in my opinion, or at least the way that has been portrayed in the political spectrum. So sue me. But I find it interesting that we're now at a point where in, I think 2016 or 2017, I haven't really been paying attention too much to the years, when Bernie Sanders was running against Hillary Clinton for the Democratic seat for the presidential election. And it, to me, because there was also Andrew Yang, I believe, running against Trump the second time, maybe. I don't even remember anymore, but he didn't even make it. I think it might have been Clinton who ended up running twice against Trump. I don't even remember, because it was Clinton against Biden, maybe. I don't even remember. I've been so checked out. After 2020, I was like, yo, this circus has got to go, from my knowledge, from my paying attention to. So anyway, it's definitely the case that we are in a position, because how long, okay, so Andrew Yang was talking about what was it, the universal basic income, and if we would have had that, I don't think that we would have ever had to deal with all of these weird international international affairs that the US has been having, like problems with China, or problems with, most recently, who was it, Was it Iran? No, not Iran. I'm so fucking stupid. Tehran. With the whole military missiles and everything. Okay. So we're taxing every country now on imports. We're taxing everybody on. I think we're up to like 50% on some countries, which is kind of ridiculous. It's because in my mind, okay, yes, that would incentivize local. It would stimulate the need for local production, right? If foreign countries are no longer going to want to do business with us and import things to the US, then it makes sense that they won't, that the US will in turn need to start producing some of the things. But where does the raw materials, where do they come from? And so, for example, I know that metals come from Earth, right? They can be made anywhere, but they're made more cheaply from China. Like when they make the plastic stuff, like most of the plastic stuff that we get, at least historically, has been from China. That's an opinion because I don't know the actual statistics, but from a consumer perspective, that's my judgment. That I look at everything and it says made in China when it's mostly plastic. When we look at like laptops and stuff like that, some of them are made in Japan, but some of them are made in China. And like the cheaper ones that are just not the metal that we are used to, not the percentage of electron, electron covalent bonds open in the chemicals, then it's not as good of a metal. I hope that made sense to people. But my point is that if we look at the international relations that we've been having, this whole battle with the rest of the world, right? Why is it necessary? Why do we need to have all of these conflicts? And in my humble opinion, this whole time, my whole life, I've just been thinking, okay, well, I don't know that. I'm checking out my shoes in the background. I'm not even gonna lie. I got some. Okay, so I remember growing up. Side note, I remember growing up. New Balance shoes, where they were the knockoff Nikes. Like if you got New Balance shoes, it's because you couldn't afford the Nikes. That's how it was in my perspective as a child. Then I got Nikes. New Balance. I have Vans. I'm wearing Vans. I'm wearing Vans. And Vans are my favorite, I think, which is why all of those shoes are up there, because they're thin. Is it because I have flat feet? Yes. Probably. I've seen somewhere posted on social media that flat feet is a punishment from God. I think I partially agree because it's so inconvenient and it makes my shoes look ugly. And it makes me, I feel like maybe I put too many like I I place the blame too much on other problems that I have because of flat feet. Maybe just laziness and stuff like that. But anyway, in today's political spectrum, I feel like it's healthy to have this mindset of like sharing is caring, of the community should all be receiving equally the basic needs. And so Mamdani, one of the things that he's doing, he's making basically one of the things that he staked his campaign on basically was one of the things that he mentioned during the debates and during his public conversations and interviews was that he thinks that the my dog wants attention, that the grocery stores should be kind of run by the government, or monitored or overseen by the government, which I 100% agree with, because I remember when I worked at the store, when I worked at Target, there was the closest to helping the people make sure that they're not getting ripped off was the weights and measures people that would come in, and they would make sure that everything, that the literally that the scales are not lying to you, that the price on the tags relate to the amount of product that you're getting. So they're not there to monitor the price. They're just making sure that the store is not pulling a quick one on you. And it's a little bit sad that, as far as me as being an employee, that's as much government intervention into, like, other than food programs, into making sure that people aren't being taken advantage of when it comes to their basic needs when they go to the store. And it's insane that kind of the political climate that we're under right now, especially with Trump and the big beautiful bill, it's like kind of going backwards. It's going into, I don't even know, it's an authoritarian government for sure, and you hear that, and we've had it's been tossed around on the media, and we've had the No Kings protests, and it's just a little bit baffling to see how back rolling we are from something more progressive, which is what liberal really is, which is really caring about the people, not caring about corporations, not caring about these bigger companies that at the end of the day, they just need to make more income next year, and then the next year, and then more the next year, and then every year needs to make more money than the previous. And it's like, how does that make sense as an economy? How does that make sense? If you want to define an economy as something that doesn't make sense, how does that make sense for humanity to continue with economy? It doesn't. So I think about so Zoran Mamdani, and wanting to establish the government should be making food affordable for everybody who lives within that government. How is that crazy? How, like, we are in a new world where AI can basically take all of our jobs and do it probably better than every single one of us, if we chose to invest appropriately into every single one of those avenues that's gonna develop that technology and just make it happen. And it's not even like, oh, we need to come up with these new crazy inventions. It's like, no, dude, there's already like self-service AI robots that do everything that a human can do. They can manage so many more individual smaller things than humans can, right? So why is it that we don't implement them to do that? And it's like, well, where is society focusing its efforts? What needs to change within a society for things to just be better, right? And it's like, well, who's running the society? Who creates the society? Who makes everything happen? It's like humans. It's so, there's errors, there's imperfections, but so I don't want to sound too judgmental, but something like, to me, in my lifespan, I graduated high school over 10 years ago. It's insane in my mind that I almost have an entire lifetime up until I entered high school, to the point of like how many, like, I already did high school and I'm about to finish another whole lifetime past high school, and it's just like, that was my last big social interactions, because in college I didn't really interact, and I spent like 7 years in college, and then I took years off Um, I took more than 7 years in college. I took maybe like 9 years or 10 years in college. Um, Probably. Well, I took breaks, but anyway. So, I'm just saying, my last social interactions were, at least when I reached adulthood, right? It's almost double that time. Not necessarily, because I'm still actually like 7 years from that time, but just to put it in reference, like, because I feel like most adults mostly don't consume social media, and I'm posting this on social media. Most adults just live their life and do not get on the internet, and it baffles me. It's insane how much data you're restricting within your own mind when you do that. But it's like, okay, I have to not judge. This is how people live. This is what is comfort. I'm not a functional adult, so I have to take in consideration that this is how life is, right? Okay, so I'm taking way too long backdating this mentality of politics, because when I was in high school, we had Obama. When I was in middle school, we had Obama leading into high school. And then we had Trump. And I thought to myself, and I was in my early adulthood, after Bernie didn't make it onto the ballot for, the final vote for president, and it was between Clinton and Trump, I was mentally checked out. I had given up. I literally voted once, and it was for Bernie, and my man Bernie didn't make it. And if we would have gone the route that we are going now, because I have seen a lot of hate for Mamdani winning, and I've seen a lot of support and public outcry for, like, wow, we finally have somebody who's gonna listen to the lowest of the low. Not somebody who's just gonna pretend that they're part of a community that they're not, just because they get related to it because that's how they speak, or those are the points that they know how to deliver. That really exposes a lot about the underpinnings of society, and I can understand why, for example, people are feeling afraid to kind of speak up and say things in public. But at the same time, I'm like, if you don't say something, then who's gonna say it? And I feel like even somebody just like AOT, Alexandra Ortiz something. I'm butchering her name, but she's like one of the House representatives for like Texas or something. And she's just been like kind of just very vocal about kind of how the system needs to be fixed. And it, like, okay, you'll hear a lot, call it the turn of the century's politics, post 2000s politics, right? That we're against the grain. We do not want conservatives. We don't want conservatism. We don't want the Republicans to take over, because that's what it was earlier. That's what it was prior. That's what it was in the early 2000s that we got out of. And that's what it was in the late 90s and the 90s that we got out of, right? And historically, I feel like Republicans have kind of pushed forward a little bit more. And I feel like at some point in our history, it is a fact that the Republicans and the Democrats pretty much switched sides. They switched what they stood for and what type of political issues the name was going to support. That's well documented in history, that basically if your mentality of a Democrat in today's society is that, then you would have a different one, the opposite, which would be a Republicans if you're a Democrat back in the day. And if you think more conservative, like a Republican today, that would have been called a Democrat back, you know, pre-Civil War, pre the whole slavery thing. So I'm not well educated on all of this, but I just thought it would be interesting to put a political post out there that, so this swing of we can call it modernity. I don't know why. I guess it wouldn't technically have. So if we're talking about a pendulum swinging from one side to the other and back and forth and back and forth, then all I'm saying is that maybe I'm sensing that back and forth is kind of switching. It could be subjective. It could be that I'm just, within my own perspective and realizing something, but I do feel like the concept, because I remember growing up as well, that the concept of a Republican was somebody who valued tradition or had traditional values, and those were mostly based around family, and those were mostly based around protecting the individual and the government, not necessarily the highest form of government intervening into our lives more than the local governments. And that makes sense, right? Because you want the most local to the people to be the most powerful and the most influential. But what that actually means when you look at the world of politics and the definitions that have been applied to describe the specific my dogs are getting a little rowdy, and specifically Amelia is getting a little too aggressive. Anyway, the ways in which these qualities, attributes, and so on and so forth get carried out by specific people, and then we start talking about characteristics that get attached, right, to these people that are approving certain legislature or voting for or speaking on behalf of maybe something that they haven't even read through completely. Oh man. Then we start to see how the definitions kind of do change over time, and how it is that, well, certain general ideas might be easy to understand on paper, but when you look up into what's actually happening, do Republicans actually stand up for the smallest person? And I don't think that we're in factually speaking, like, for example, if you want to say that to take care of the working class, to take care of the people who are putting in all the labor, and we look at unions, which we know unions are good. Me as growing up as a poor person, union jobs are always like, okay, if you can go to college and be a doctor or something like that, cool. If not, get a union job, because they're going to take care of you. They're going to have good health care. They're going to make sure that you're protected, that your rights aren't being violated, that there's people there to tell you about what your rights even are. And I've worked at workplaces that have unions and that don't have unions, and it's like horrible. And it's like, and then I look at coworkers that are striving to get into a union job, and I'm just like, yeah, they're just trying to get something better, where they're not going to get taken advantage of, and that's where they're building their future. And I stayed away from all of those things because I'm just like, well, it takes commitment, right? So I'm getting a little bit sidetracked, but we look at all of the uh, the red states and the blue states, and who doesn't have unions, and it's the red states, it's the Republicans. And it's like, well, so they're not actually standing up for the lowest person. They're standing up for whoever's talking about family values. It's not really about taking care of every single person, because I live in California, so it's a little bit of a weird situation for me to even use that kind of example. But because in California, I feel like, generally speaking, there's a class action lawsuit. At least I've gotten mail from from lawyers and stuff that, like, oh, there was a class action lawsuit, here's money that you were owed. And it's like, yeah, my employer was taking advantage of a lot of people in a lot of different ways, and they got in trouble for it. But that's only to say that they got in trouble insofar as how much they got caught for, and how much that they were legally able to prove that they did do bad, right? So we don't see the red states fighting for people, for the working class, like that. And I'm just basing this off of, I have not gone out there and looked at statistics myself, but this is conversation that I've heard, and this is stuff that I've heard in debates. Like, if the people debating are lying, then I guess I'm incorrect, because I have looked some of these facts up, and I'm not to the degree familiar with at least having these type of political stances, arguments, and debates to make my point. Zuko! He's making a mess. I'm not well researched on all of this, but I think, generally speaking, when I say things, it's because I either heard it from a reputable source, like just somebody that I really trust, that wouldn't just lie on like a public record, that they wouldn't just say something just to try to give themselves a little bit of a credibility boost. So if they are incorrect, the only situation in which I can honestly accept that they were incorrect and that I stood behind them is because that, they had to have something that they incorrectly remembered, or somebody told them wrong, that they trusted, or they looked it up and misinterpreted the information there. But for me, I don't even know who to trust as a media source, because, for example, look at Pew Research. I'm like, okay, but how do I know that Pew Research isn't just lying as well? How do I know that they're not just in tandem with all the people that they say on their website that accredits them? Or I don't even know if they have that, but like a lot of websites do that, and it's just like when I was researching how to become a nurse and like the process and stuff, I was so confused. I'm like, who's giving you guys authorization to say all of this stuff? Because some of you guys are .orgs, some of you guys are .coms, none of you are .gov. The only very few websites that were related to .gov would just link you and tell you, oh, go to their website, go to the board's website. And it's just like, that's a very vague statement, right? So even in just trying to fact check something for my own license, for my whole occupation, that was a whole confusion. And it's very vague. And it's like, who gives you guys the authority to just make these statements and be like, yeah, we exist, we're in charge of this? Because that's how scams work. Scams just tell you random stuff like that. They just tell you like, oh, they'll just tell you like, this is an opportunity, or like, this, we are here, we are the official people of this thing. And then it's like, but when you try to verify, and it's just like, for example, like the credit people, the people that are like the trans union and stuff like that, like, who gave them the authority to like calculate my credit? You know what I mean? Like, just because everybody trusted them, like, is there as far as I know, and I cannot find, where's their algorithm? What's this very trusty formula that they're using? Can I verify it? Can I make any adjustments if I think that I can improve it? Right? So I don't think that today's governments, I don't think that the upper echelons really listen to the lower echelons, especially if they don't meet the specific criteria that they require to give you an audience. And it's like, well, I don't believe in those politics, but they do happen and they do exist in the world around me. So it's kind of like hard to contend with those two realities that, well, they're happening, but at the same time, I don't want to be conscious of them. So my hiatus back when, like, basically between Obama and Trump, because wasn't Biden, did Biden do 2 terms? I don't even remember. But did Biden, no, Biden did 1 term. Then he was going to run for a second one. Then Kamala came in. Ha ha ha, we did it, Joe. I wish I could do the cackle. You exist in the context within which you were born and all that exists around it. Something like that. Girl, you were one for the media. And so I think it's interesting that Mamdani won, because at least coming from this reality where like the housing crisis happened in 2008, and having like, okay, it's cool. I'm like totally for that progressive movement of Obama was the first black president. It would have been awesome, in my opinion, to have Kamala be the first female president, and she would have been of color. Those are just titles, though. Those don't really matter. Like, we have to actually look at the person and the type of things that they would actually have done. And so thinking about Obama and how he like bailed out the automotive industry, and then thinking about, okay, well, when he did bail out the automotive industry back in like sometime around after like 2008 or something like that, then cars became affordable for some time afterward. Now Corvette is over here messing with the mess that Zuko made. So he bailed out the car industry, basically, and I don't even know what that's about, because it's like, if you bailed out the car industry, wouldn't you just have bailed out the banks that deal with car loans and stuff like that? Isn't that what you, or like, but again, I don't know. I'm just a kid. I don't know how contracts work between car dealerships and bank lenders, loan people. So, but my point is that it definitely affected the economy. I'm not sure if there's even things that could be specifically done to ameliorate such type of matters, but I definitely don't feel that having a. And by the way, Trump said very early on that if he were to run for president, like this is when he was younger, that he would do it under the Republican Party because they're easier to basically maneuver. And so I think that speaks volumes that he ran the way that he ran. And he's self-made. Sure. No, I'm sorry. If you give me $1 billion today, best believe I'm not going to go under $1 billion. And best believe it's going to be much easier for me to get into the trillions than somebody who has a net value or net worth of a couple $1,000s or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or even millions. And that's being a house owner and having multiple loans and debts in California, by the way, in LA, more specifically. If you own a house in LA, that shit probably is, you're probably $1 million net worth as is, or close to. So it's a crazy economy, because if you go to say for example, literally anywhere else, you could buy a house for like a couple grand. That's how much it costs. A couple grand. But the whole first world versus third world, and then like populated areas versus unpopulated areas. But anyway, Mamdani and that whole thing, it's very interesting that I think we're in that political shift. I think we're in that point where we are definitely transitioning from what family values are regarded as it's definitely like having an ethical, moral shift as a society, as humanity, as all of that. It's definitely progressing on a scale that I would say it's maybe not have been seen, maybe just by me, and so it's really interesting to see the times that we're in. I don't think that it's time to kind of be calling everybody out on specific issues, but is it ever that time, or is it always that time? And am I just wrong about my stance? So it's very interesting to see where we're heading, because to me, that whole cry for universal basic income with Andrew Yang, that was kind of in opposition or in response to that socialism from Bernie Sanders that's kind of been climbing, at least from my perspective, that's been since high school. I've been hearing about studies and pilot programs throughout my life, and it's just really interesting that there's finally a politician that has won a huge political ground stance position seat, where people are very in line on that same boat of like, yeah, everything needs to be affordable to the family of today, and it simply isn't. And I remember in high school and going into college, I was advocating for making internet be regarded as a basic human need as much as water or any other utility like electricity or heat, because realistically, if you don't have access to the internet, you don't have access to a lot of information that is potentially life-saving, that's life-changing, that's gonna help you more than anybody else could, because you're just a couple of words away from finding a further resource. And you might not get that with every single person that you interact with, but the internet, at least a search engine, you can just search one thing and it's gonna give you a relatively neutral or popularly helpful result. Whereas if you go talk to somebody and ask them about something that's very, very uniquely and deeply meaningful to maybe just an individual, but it might not be to everybody, it's going to be something that you find the value of within yourself, that nobody else is going to be able to give you that appropriate response except searching that on the internet and then seeing what else is out there. Because if you do that and you don't find anything, then it's time to go into your real life. But what if in your real life and you don't find anything? Then what other recourse do you have? And that's less to talk about the actual education that happens, because for example in the school system you need internet access to look at your grades, to see just like how your assignment was graded, how your test was, to message the teacher, to get your homework, to do research. At the most importantly is the research, but anything in between you and being able to be an individual free active agent in your environment, anything that comes in between that is automatically going to be an important aspect of what it is that encompasses what you need to be able to act, to be able to do anything within that environment. So for me, these are very fundamental, philosophical, metaphysical, not just metaphysical, but also epistemologically important happenings and developments in the human species and cognitive development. Not to overcomplicate anything, really, but I just do think that we're at that curve in society that things could be exponentially kind of like exploding in a very specific way, technologically, but also socially, parasocially, sociologically, psychologically. I think that if it's true that maybe we are always at that crux, depending on the level of independent awareness or something along those matters, I don't think that it holds such a strong hold, like grip on real reality, if it's just something that's, for example, a spiritual truth to one's self. No, I don't think that's what it is. I think that we are at a point where, well, it's definitely something that, if you even just look at AI and the things that it is possible to do with them, with the agents and the agencies that we've bestowed onto unalive technology, basically, it's very interesting, right? So I don't have much else to say, and I really, really need to use the restroom. I have a small bladder, I suppose. And I am sad to say that I'm vaping again. But those have to be allegations. Maybe. Probably not. Anyway. That's today. That concludes today's podcast, and I hope for something. Okay, goodbye. Have a good day.